Hi there. Welcome to my video called You Can Beat Insomnia. If you're watching this video, it's because you can't sleep or a loved one can't sleep or someone you know you can't sleep and you're looking for more information on how you can get a good night's sleep. I know that it can be absolutely debilitating to not be able to sleep at night because I haven't been able to sleep, and I have a lot of patients that come into my office that we work with and we try to help recover their inability to sleep. And I thought it'd be a great idea to put this video together so that you can learn how you can finally get a good night's sleep. So in this video we're going to be talking about why you're not sleeping and what we can do to try to help you. When I did a little research on the internet to find out how many people suffer with insomnia, it's amazing. I just cannot believe it. It's somewhere in the 64 million people that have some form of sleep disturbance, whether it's falling asleep, staying asleep, waking up throughout the night, waking up feeling refreshed, and it's getting to be an epidemic, and I thought I needed to put a video together so that I can tell you what we're doing in our office to be able to help you sleep. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the MD solution. The MD solution is typically go into the doctor and tell him you can't sleep, and he or she is going to prescribe you some kind of medication. Ambien, Lunesta, different type of medications that are designed to help you sleep, even Xanax or antidepressants. And my feeling about that is that it's never a one cause, one cure problem, meaning I may be depressed, but if I get prescribed an antidepressant, is that necessarily going to make me sleep? Or more importantly, let's work backwards and say, well, why am I depressed? Or why do I have the ability to not fall asleep? It's not necessarily just one thing. So even though it could be, let's say the doctor is prescribing you an antidepressant or something to calm your nerves, why are your nerves not calm, or why are you depressed? Let's figure that reason out and address those. And hopefully naturally, because if you take all this medication, you're having to process that medication, break it down, and eliminate it from the body. And that requires your organs like your liver and your kidney to be able to process that and break it down. And over time, yeah, it might be great, we may be able to sleep, but we also know internally that this is not the healthiest thing we can do in the world. And in fact, what happens is we start to have other symptoms like liver problems, kidney problems, fluid retention, and then liver produces hormones, and then we have problems with that sort of spiral out of control. So you're probably watching this video because you're tired of the MD solution for having just a medication to help you fall asleep, and you're not really getting any real answers as to what you can do now naturally to help you sleep. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So medications are a short-term solution we just mentioned, and they are not a long-term solution. They're not addressing the reason why you're not sleeping. So I wanted to talk to you today about what we do in our office. My alternative is a functional medicine answer. Functional medicine basically is the new term in healthcare where you look at the biochemical and the physiological mechanisms in the body and you address those. So you want to figure out, why you're not sleeping. Potentially it could be you're not producing energy, you're not using glucose properly, you're not delivering enough oxygen, you could have a lot of inflammation in the body, there could be an immune dysregulation, there could be a heavy metal toxicity, there could be a mold exposure. The heavy metal toxicity could be from the So these are all the things I'm going to be talking to you today about on this video. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you today about are the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are probably the number one healthcare crisis out there that isn't being looked at. And the reason that is because the pharmaceutical companies have not come up with a real solution or pill that they can manufacture and patent and sell for gazillions of dollars and tell you that you have a problem and this is what we're going to do is we're going to fix it. So that's why you don't know about it. But basically, in a nutshell, your adrenal glands are these little walnut-sized organs that sit on top of your kidneys, and they're responsible for regulating how you deal with stress. So the example I use is, God forbid, I'm being held up at gunpoint, and then all of a sudden I have a crazy reaction of adrenaline, and then the adrenaline has to only have a certain timeline in my bloodstream, and then ultimately I have to sort of recover my hyperventilation, and I have to get my heart rate back to normal. I have to still think and function, and so that's when cortisol comes onto the scene and helps regulate my energy levels as well. So the adrenal glands, when we're stressed out all the time, when we're not eating several meals throughout the day and we're waiting 6 to 12 hours between the last time we ate, when we drink a lot of caffeine or energy drinks, when we have infections, when we deal with a lot of stress in our lives, our adrenal glands start to poop out. And when that happens, because our adrenal glands are related to our circadian rhythms, which mean when I first get up in the morning, I should be really ready to go, I should have a lot of energy, and I should be ready to take on the day. My adrenal glands should be properly functioning, I should have a high cortisol level, and I should be ready to go. And then as the day continues, my cortisol levels tend to fall, and then by the time the end of the day comes, my cortisol levels should be the lowest. I should hit the pillow and fall asleep like a baby. Then the next day, I should have the energy again. So if that's going on, then our adrenal glands are working well. Because this video is about insomnia and patients that can't sleep, pretty much when they go to bed, their cortisol levels could be way too high. And when their cortisol levels are way too high, they're not able to fall asleep. And interestingly enough, when your cortisol levels are high, your melatonin levels are low. And a lot of people will take melatonin and say, yeah, doc, I take melatonin and it really helps me sleep. That's good, but what's happening is that you're not going back upstream and figuring out where the dam got broken. You're going way downstream and you're trying to take the water out of the pond, but meanwhile, the water keeps trickling down. And so you got to go upstream and figure out why is the cortisol levels being too high, and subsequently why are the melatonin levels being too low. And that's when you get into a holistic quagmire of you have a doctor that prescribes you medication for one problem, and then from a holistic point of view, you're taking a supplement to try to fix one problem, but meanwhile, it's all these things that are going on upstream. So we focus on the adrenal glands almost immediately when you're coming in and you can't function properly. The adrenal glands are just one part of the problem though, so there's other problems. So we could do an adrenal saliva test. That's what we do in our office. Basically, we take 4 saliva samples throughout the day to see what your circadian rhythms are. So they should be really high, like I mentioned, in the morning, and then they should start falling down throughout the day. When we do adrenal saliva tests, we may find that that's really high throughout the whole day. Or we may find it's really low throughout the whole day. Or we may find that it's dysregulated, so it's low, then high, then low, then high, or high, then low, then high, then low. All of those are different solutions. So it's pivotal that when we do an insomnia patient coming into our office and we're going to help them recover, then we look at their adrenal function. But this is just one problem. We may not find anything with this adrenal gland, or we may find something and the patient won't be helped 100% because they have other things going on. So we're looking at the big picture to try to figure out what can we do to knock down all the problems. So there's other organs involved. What other organs, if you're unable to sleep? The gallbladder. So in Chinese medicine, we have acupuncture, and I'm sure you or your friend or a loved one has gone there, and they stick needles into different meridian points, and those different meridian points are responsible for different organ systems. So your gallbladder in Chinese medicine is essential for you to fall asleep. So we can do blood testing or we can do muscle testing in our office to figure out how well your gallbladder is functioning. And if it's something that is lagging or tired or sluggish, then that could be another reason. So if I only focused on your adrenal glands but we didn't focus on your gallbladder, we would find that you wouldn't have the insomnia solution that you're looking for. If you're unable to stay asleep, so that was if you can't fall asleep. A lot of people have problems falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up feeling refreshed. So if you can't stay asleep, in Chinese medicine, that is the stomach point. And the stomach point, if you're older than 30, I can pretty much guarantee you have some stomach issues. The most common problem that I find is hypochlorhydria, which is in our office of people that are older than 30 years old. Basically what happens is as we get older, we lose our ability to secrete stomach acid. And when we lose our ability to secrete stomach acid, then we're not digesting foods optimally and we're not absorbing foods optimally, and then we start having nutrient deficiencies. So it's a big long line of problems, but basically what happens is our stomach acid is designed to disinfect the foods that we eat. So we're really engineered for a raw food diet, which means, you know, the hunter and gatherer foods. These are foods that aren't cooked, and that's easily digested. However, when we had technology and we started cooking our foods and we started creating other different types of foods, I'm not going to get into that just yet, that put a burden on our stomach as well. We're a very protein dominant type of society where we love to eat our protein. Ideally, a protein should be the size of a deck card, like a card deck. That's an ideal size, but you know, you go to a all-you-can-eat buffet or you have a huge Thanksgiving dinner and the protein is just way too much. So what happens is our stomach acid gets basically completely exhausted, and now we're not able to digest these foods. So that's a huge problem, and there's a lot of things we can do in our office to try to help you. If you're not waking up feeling refreshed, we talked a little bit about that earlier. That's basically your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are regulated by your circadian rhythms, which is in our brain and our hippocampus area. And if we have a lot of inflammation in our body, our adrenal glands are out of whack, and our brain timer is no longer able to tell us what time it is. Are we able to wake up refreshed? So that's a huge problem we just talked about. So how do we know if you have a gallbladder problem, if you have an adrenal problem, or if you have a stomach problem? We know, just like any other doctor would know, is we do blood tests. And there's a lot of different blood tests that we can look at that will be able to point whether or not there's a problem with this particular organ. So for example, gallbladder, we're looking at bilirubin. We have direct, indirect, how well we're conjugating and getting release of red blood cells. That's a lot of stuff that we can look at. Stomach, we look at your protein, your BUN, phosphorus, albumin, globulin, even your MCV. So we're looking at different things, and we actually look at it from a functional medicine point of view. I want to talk to you about that very quickly. Basically, I had a patient come in today, and she was told that her blood tests were normal, but meanwhile they weren't. So for example, her TSH levels were 0.50. So on a laboratory test score, you'll see 0.5 to 5.0. And so she's told, it's a little low, but we don't need to do anything about it. From a functional medicine point of view, it should be 1.8 to 3.0. And so that means what is an ideal range for someone that's healthy, whereas the 0.5 to 5.0 is for someone who's not healthy, who's sick. And if you're beyond that level, then you got to go on medication. So wouldn't you rather be compared to someone who's healthy versus someone who's considered normal? In general, our society isn't very healthy anyway. So if you're normal, then you're not necessarily healthy. So when we're looking at your blood tests, like we're looking at your protein, your BUN, your phosphorus, your albumin, your globulin, we're looking at it from a functional range point of view. And that takes a lot of time. And a lot of doctors just don't have the time to be able to spend with you and go over your functional ranges. And they say, oh, you're normal. And you know deep down when you leave that office, if they've given you a prescription or they say you're normal and you don't need a prescription, it hasn't addressed the problem. You know that deep down something is going on that needs to be addressed. Hypochlorhydria we talked about, that's when you have low stomach acid. You'll find that your protein will be low, your albumin will be low, globulin will be low potentially, your MCV will be high, your alkaline phosphatase will be low. So these are a lot of things that I can see right away, and I tell you know what, you got a problem with digestion, stomach acid. And what do we have on the market nowadays? That's one of the main supplement over-the-counter medications is antacids. And to me, yes, there are people that suffer with high acid, but mainly it's low acid. And you have this marketing machine coming in and selling these medications that, you know, potentially what's happening is you have too little stomach acid, it's not digesting the food optimally, and then all of a sudden you get putrefaction and upchucking or up gas, and that's what gives you that heartburn. So that really kind of upsets me. We talked a little bit earlier about what we do with the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands is an ASI test. A lot of doctors will tell you that the blood tests are greater than or a lot more accurate than the saliva test, and I'd have to disagree. The blood test absolutely will tell you what your bound fraction of that protein means, meaning when you have of that hormone is. So like you're measuring your cortisol levels when you're doing a blood test for cortisol, but it's the amount that's already bound to blood. It's not the amount that's available for use. Whereas your saliva sample is the one that's not bound, it's in the mucosa, and it's the one that's the free fraction of the hormone, and that's the one that's more available. The other thing is that the one that we're doing for the blood test won't tell you what you look like from a circadian rhythm point of view. We were talking about how your adrenal glands are related to your circadian rhythms, and we're talking about insomnia and not being able to sleep. Wouldn't it make sense that a blood test, depending on what time of the day, is not going to tell you how your cortisol is behaving at other times of the day? I mean, even if you have a doctor that's closed-minded and says that a saliva sample isn't going to help them in terms of knowing what your cortisol levels are, wouldn't you at least want a benchmark to know what your saliva samples are throughout the whole day, so that if you do medication like they prescribe, medication isn't for long-term, it's short-term, you're trying to fix something. So that means you have to do a post-test, and you want to see how well you've improved. I bet with a blood sample, there's too many variables. You're going to do it at a different time. You have to go to the lab and get punctured to take it. So I'd disagree 100% on saliva samples not being valuable. In fact, if you are suffering with insomnia, I'd tell you need to get a saliva sample and look at your circadian rhythms. We also do kinesiology in our office. Basically, we have different points we talked about, referred to a little bit earlier, on different points in your body that's responsible for different organ functions. We have your stomach and gallbladder and liver, and we have deep sleep points. So we do a muscle test, and people look at me like, are you kidding me? You do muscle tests? How can that even relate to anything that I can't sleep? And I'll explain to someone, a muscle test is basically, we all have a bioenergetic field. If I were to, knock on wood, be dead right here on the floor, all my bones and my cells and my whole physical body would be there, but something would be missing. And that's what we call our life force, or our electrical conductivity. And that electrical conductivity is responsible for life, basically. So if I have any interference on my energy field, then potentially it's not vibrating or resonating at an ideal frequency. We can do a muscle test to tell if that's a sick organ or a healthy organ. And that relates to our sleeping point. So I never do that as 100% standalone. I want to look at your blood results. I want to put it on a functional scale, and I want to correlate that with the muscle testing that we do, and to see if we are having consistency, so that you can have the best solution, which means falling asleep. That's what you want. All right, so who am I and why am I producing this video for you? My name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am a board-certified chiropractic physician that I've practiced here in Boca Raton since 2002. And I am currently enrolled in something called the Functional Medicine University. This is going to allow me to be a certified functional medicine practitioner. But basically, the whole reason I'm talking to you today about this is this book right here. I had an acupuncturist as a patient come in, and he brought this book in. It's called, Why Do I Still Have Thyroid Symptoms When My Lab Tests Are Normal? And I got to tell you, that was probably, they got all these dog ears on this page, and I need a new one, because this book really has changed my life, and it's changed my patient's life. I haven't necessarily suffered with thyroid problems, and you may not necessarily suffer with thyroid problems, but you suffer with insomnia. And potentially you have an adrenal problem like I did, or you could have an immune problem, or you can have a blood sugar problem, or you can have a heavy metal toxicity problem. This book is the nuts and bolts of why you have the problem and what you can do to fix it. So I would suggest, if you want more information, read this book. But we model our practice after the techniques that are taught in this book. And this Dr. Karazian, he teaches seminars across the country called Apex Energetics. I've taken almost all the modules, and I want to continue taking the modules because this stuff is life-changing for you. You don't want to get to sleep and you don't want to take medication, then you need to read alternative methods. So this basically changed my life. The other book that changed my life is this book right here, and it is entitled What Do You Do When the Medications Don't Work? The doctor that wrote this book is named Dr. Michael Johnson. He has a program called Neurometabolic Supergroup, which I'm part of. And if you go on to lifechangingcare.com, you'll see all the conditions doctors across the country are working with, and insomnia is one of them. And you'll see all the testimonials about all the patients that we've helped with our natural methods. Now, so that's that. Also, currently I'm enrolled in something called American Functional Neurology Institute. You have patients. Basically, the one thing I want to explain to you from this video is if you didn't get anything else out of this video and I'm boring you to death and you wanted to turn it off right now, then I want you to write this down. Number one is your body has the ability to heal itself. Studies show nowadays that if you provide the right environment for your body, it will be able to heal itself. Not just take this pill or take this supplement, it's figuring out why. But if you have the proper environment, then it has every tool it needs to be able to heal itself. Number two, your body's immune system is in the gut, and 80% of our immune system is in the gut. So if we have a healthy immune system, then our body can heal itself. So that goes to stand to reason that if you fix the gut, then you have the best opportunity to allow your body to heal from any condition. In this case, insomnia. But fixing the gut is not as easy as it sounds. It means I got to fix any type of blood sugar issues, I got to fix any anemia issues, any inflammation issues, any autoimmunity issues, a lot of different issues that I can fix. And then the last one is the brain. The brain controls every single cell in the body. It controls every organ in the body and every tissue in the body. And so in a good state of health, I should be able to sense things accurately. I should be able to not be in pain all the time and sleep. And I should have muscle strength and balance and coordination. And when there's a metabolic issue, like we just talked about, like glucose or anemias or autoimmunities, that can start affecting the brain, and then all of a sudden we have anxiety, we have insomnia. So there's a neurological component to it as well that we have to absolutely work in, and allowing myself basically studying the functional neurology from the American Functional Neurology Institute has allowed me to help fix you as much as I can, and looking at the neurological component of it. So I'm creating this video because I want to reinvent your life. I've had a lot of patients that have suffered with insomnia that I see going down that pathway of Ambien and taking all these medications and Xanax, and that's not the problem. The problem is all the other things we just talked about. I want to have as much positive impact on the people that I come in with, so that's why I'm creating this video today. And I want to end your cycle of running from doctor to doctor. How frustrating is it to go from one doctor to the next, and really not have someone sit down and look at all the tests that you've done? I mean, I look at these, Functional Medicine University, we have a lot of modules that, we talk about doctors that see patients that have been they come with like a pile of notes. And all these notes are the same thing. The doctor didn't do anything. He may have adjusted your medication and then lowered it, and he's chasing your tail. And it's like, if you just look at the information on here, you'll find that there's all these other things going on that you can help naturally. And let's get back one more time into the functional ranges. So the functional range is at 1.8 to 3.0 for the thyroid test. Remember I mentioned that, and it should be between 0.5 and 5.0. So unless you're 5.1 or 0.49, they're not going to go on any type of medications. And then they're not going to tell you your tests are normal. That's ridiculous. The way I explain that is I have twins that are 11 years old, and if they're in school and they do lousy on a test and they say they get a C, and that C, needs to be a B or an A, I'm going to start to, look at what's going on here and say, hey, buddy, we got to look over, why'd you miss this? Let's look over this test. Let's learn this concept. Let's figure out how to do it. I'm not going to wait for him to get an F and then say, oh, what happened? Like, you got an F? We gotta teach you how to do this stuff. I mean, that's what functional medicine is, and that's what laboratory ranges are. We're going to wait for you to be crappy, and then we're going to give you medication. Wouldn't you rather have a solution where you're adjusting as you go along? If you start falling back or you start delaying in certain things, that you actually remediate and get better? I mean, to me that makes sense, and it's cheaper. I mean, when you have a problem like a cavity, if that cavity gets deeper and deeper and deeper and you ignore it, then the next thing you know, you need a root canal, you need bridge work, you need a crown, and that's a lot of money. So if you, I'm sure that makes a lot of sense to you. So I'm trying to end that cycle of running from doctor to doctor to doctor. Other factors, though, besides organ problem that could be causing your insomnia. So it's not just everything we talked about, it's other things as well. So we have what's called the web of physiologic dysfunction. That's a bit of a mouthful, but what does that basically mean? So we have health breakers that could, and I've touched upon them a little bit earlier. The health breakers could be gut dysfunction. So 80% of our immune system is in our gut. And if our gut has leakiness, the example I use is, think of your gut and the tight barriers that digest the food as a strainer, a fine metal strainer. So we make pasta, and you have this fine metal strainer, and you pour the pasta out and in the water, and it drains the water, and the water falls through, and then you have all that pasta in there, which you shouldn't be on, by the way. But anyways, so the leaky gut is when now you're no longer using a strainer, you're using a colander. And that colander is one that has big holes in it. And you put that pasta in there, and not only is the water falling through, but the pasta's falling through too. That's an immune problem. That's an immune barrier problem. And when that happens, when all that pasta starts falling out of there, it's like the food that we're eating is falling through into our bloodstream undigested. And when it gets in there undigested, then your immune system comes and attacks it and creates an immune reaction, and that creates inflammation. When we have inflammation, consider that like a blowtorch. What will happen is a blowtorch, you take a blowtorch to this, how functional is this TV going to be? It's not going to be functional at all. If we have a blowtorch in or inflammation in our body, our liver isn't functioning optimally, our stomach isn't functioning optimally, our gallbladder isn't functioning optimally. There's our 3 things for sleeping. Our brain isn't functioning optimally, so we have brain fog. We got a lot of problems here, and you're taking one pill, that's not going to fix it. We also have blood sugar dysregulation. Again, functional medicine, we have 85 to 99. That's the range that you want to be. So if you're above 99 and say you're 110, you're too high. Now, I think the ranges are 65 to 105, or 65 to 110, or 65 to 100. Those are the laboratory ranges. So again, let's say I'm 72. I look normal from a laboratory range, but from a functional range, I'm hypoglycemic. I get shaky, lightheaded, irritable if I miss a meal, and then what happens is my adrenal glands are told, hey, there's no sugar in the bloodstream, you got to get some sugar in there, we got no energy, so your cortisol levels are secreted, sugar is put into the bloodstream, and what did we talk about the adrenals earlier? They regulate your circadian rhythms, so if your blood sugar is too low, which you weren't told it was too low because you were told 75 is normal from a laboratory range, even though it's 80 to 95, from a functional point of view, then all of a sudden your adrenal glands are kicking out. So that's a huge problem that I find. You need a saliva sample. You need to get in here and do that. Inflammation we talked about. Autoimmunities, oh my goodness, this is a huge problem. So we talked about that pasta falling through the colander and getting into the bloodstream. When that happens, your immune system attacks that. And then we have what's called molecular mimicry, which means your autoantibodies are going through your bloodstream right now, and they're looking at things that they need to attack because they're hypervigilant. You just had a crazy immune exposure, and now it starts attacking your thyroid. Or it starts attacking your colon, or it starts attacking your brain. These are autoimmunities that all started from your predisposition. Maybe someone else in the family had a gene that can express itself, but more importantly, your gut function and your diet and blood sugar and inflammation. So we need to, those are other deal breakers. Brain neurotransmitter stuff, we talked a little bit about that. And anemias, oh my gosh, anemias, oxygen transport. If you have no oxygen going to your, if you're a smoker, you need to stop smoking because you're not getting the delivery fuel of oxygen to your cells, and that's not allowing your brain to fire off properly, and then all of a sudden you have a problem with your circadian rhythms, or you're not able to sleep, or you have anxiety and inflammation, and you're taking a pill like Ambien to fix this. It's not going to help it. So other problems: lymphatic drainage, liver problems, fatty acid metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, energy production. EMFs, let's talk about that. No one is doing this, and we are doing this. Electric magnetic fields. So let's say, for example, I'm in my car, I have the radio turned on, and I come to an intersection and I hear the sort of that static, that electricity. That's a transponder area that I'm going through. Or I'm in my house and I have a wireless remote in my home, or I'm right near a, or I go into the airport and I got scanned with the ray. Those are electric magnetic fields that start to interfere with my own electric magnetic field, and that doesn't allow me to sleep. Or I've lost tolerance where I'm sensitive to bright lights, or I smell perfume and it gives me a headache. You have a loss of your immune tolerance, whether it's through the gut or through chemicals. But we know if that's the case and you smell a perfume or you're sensitive to light, then you've lost your immune tolerance. And when that happens, then you have a whole lot of hormonal blood sugar, inflammation, all these problems going on that is not allowing you to sleep. So that's one thing we do. We look at electric magnetic influences that could be causing you problems with sleeping. One of the things I have, I don't have it here, but on the back of my cell phone, I have this little Q disc, but basically what it does is it reduces the emittance of radioactivity from my phone so that it exposes me to less radiation. And that makes sense to you, I'm sure. I'm not that weird. I'm sure that you probably understand that as well. Dental toxicities or dental issues. I have a lot of fillings that one day I want to take out because they're metal and they're mercury. And that could be causing me huge problems, headaches. And all the blood tests that I did were normal. My doctor told me I was crazy and I was depressed and I needed to take this medication, and no one focused on my dental issues. So there's a lot of strategies we do in our office that can help at least bring that, that part of inflammation down in your body. So all need to be functional. So all those things I mentioned, they all need to be functioning optimally for maximum healing, and more importantly, from sleeping. So we talked a little bit earlier about lab tests, how the lab tests are very, very broad, and how we want to look from a functional range. We talked about that as well. So what we do is I get all my patients that I do consults with to fax me in their recent blood tests if they have them. Usually within 6 months is good. If they haven't had that, then we order tests for them, where I tell them to go to their doctor and order them. And we're looking at everything: glucose, liver, kidney, C-reactive protein, homocysteine, thyroid panel, and not just TSH, people. We need free T3, free T4, total T4, free thyroxine index, the uptake, and then here are the most important: TPO antibodies and TBG. These are, if you have, I just went over a lab test today with someone, and she was told her lab tests are normal, but she has an antibody against her thyroid. Guess what? She's got Hashimoto's. And if she doesn't fix her gut and eliminate foods, then she's not going to get better. And if she went on levothyroid or some kind of Armour thyroid and some kind of TSH program, she's never going to get better. So if you're watching this video and you have a thyroid problem and you've been on TSH and no one has ever tested you for antibodies, shame on your doctor. I mean, nothing gets me more upset than that. I mean, this is the year 2013. It's not, you know, I don't use a cassette player or even a 8-track tape to listen to now. I listen to a DVD, and that's the equivalent of proper testing. We look at cholesterol as well. Other things we do is sensitivity testing, Cyrex testing. This is what I was talking about, array number 2. That's going to tell me that fine metal strainer, is it turned into a colander? Do we see lipopolysaccharides antibodies against there? Do we see zonulin and occludin antibodies against there? If we do, you have a leaky gut. We need to fix that. We also do array number 3. This is awesome stuff. I used to think gluten sensitivity, oh, you're full of crap, you know, gluten, you don't want to go on gluten. I thought, oh, that's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. If you have an immune reaction to gluten, then you have an autoimmunity and you are suffering. And in your case, you may only see that you're not sleeping well, but you probably got more things going on than just sleeping, but you got other stuff. So we do the most extensive test in the world. Go to cyrexlabs.com if you want to see who we use. That author of that lab, or the owner of that lab, he's the most noted researcher in neuroimmunoendocrinology. So there's the the immune, and the endocrine system all interact together. And this lab test is a godsend. If you want to find out what's going on, you go to there, whether you come through me or go anywhere else. Array number 4 is cross-reactivity. This drives me crazy again. Go to the store and look at a gluten-free section, and you'll see gluten-free, but then they'll put soy in there, or quinoa, or rice, or even tapioca, or other we call gluten-like problems. You may think you're gluten-free, and you are gluten-free, but you're not reactive-free or immune reacting free, which means you're taking these foods and they're still creating problems for you, even though they were supposedly gluten-free. They are gluten-free. They're gluten-like substances that create reactions, so they're not reaction-free, and you need to do a test on that. The last one we do is an autoantibody screen. So let's say you have leaky gut, you have a gluten sensitivity, you have cross-reactivities to egg, soy, yeast, or spelt, or rice, then the likelihood is that you have a problem with an autoimmunity. Now, I have a lot of my patients that will come in and say, oh, I don't have celiac disease, so I can eat gluten. If you have a doctor that has told you that, that doctor is practicing 1980 healthcare. All gluten problems or sensitivity is not celiac, so all celiacs are gluten. So that means if you have a gluten problem, you could have an antibody that's going to attack your colon or your intestinal lining, and you're going to have erosive erosions of that area, then you're going to be celiac. But just because they didn't find any problems with the biopsy doesn't mean you have a gluten problem. And so when that happens, maybe some other tissue is being attacked, like your thyroid. And you wouldn't know that because no one tested an antibody. Or your pancreas could be attacked, and that's diabetes. Or your joints, like lupus or psoriatic arthritis, or, I mean, if you have skin eruptions. I had a patient who didn't want to start with me, and he had a bad psoriatic problem, and he's not ready to change his life. So if you're ready to change your life, then this video is for you. If you're just kind of getting information, sounds cool, but it's not for me, then it's not for you. So if this makes sense with you, then I want to see you. So basically the autoimmunity screen will tell you if you have any problems with any predictive antibodies that are going against other areas, like your stomach, like your intrinsic factor, different cells that won't allow you to absorb B12, and then you're just going to the supermarket and taking B12, and meanwhile you're putting water in a bucket that has huge holes and it's never going to stay there. So that's a huge problem. And while I'm on it, if you say, well, I want to see my doctor, I want him or her to order me a gluten test, make sure it's the Cyrex Labs, because if it's not, then probably it's going to be some BS test that's going to have just your gliadin antibody to IgA when there's other peptide structures. So that's like a false negative. That's like saying, oh, you're normal, but meanwhile there's 14, 15, 16 other peptide structures that you could have been reacting to that you're told you're normal with. So those are a couple of my pet peeves. Organic acid test. This is a urine test to tell us how we're functioning from a metabolic point of view, or how is our electrolytes, how are we producing energy? Do we have any cofactors that are missing, like magnesium or zinc? And these are necessary for vital functions. Fatty acid metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, energy production, methylation cofactor, so liver detoxification. If you have any devoid of any of these micronutrients or cofactors and you go on Ambien, you're not going to get a solution to that. So that's a huge thing that we do in our office. Stool samples. The vast majority of cancer patients are autoimmune, and we need to know what's causing it. Could be parasite, mold, fungi, bacteria, H. pylori. So if you have gastrointestinal dysfunctions, we want to know what it is so that we can help you fix that. Diagnostic, that's the ASI test. That's who we use for that. I talked a little bit about that earlier. Hormone panels, again, saliva samples the great thing about that is I can do a flexi matrix. So what that basically means is we're looking at your cortisol levels, but we're also telling the labs, hey, I want you to check out his testosterone levels or her luteinizing or progesterone levels or her FSH levels. Or his estrone levels, or his DHEA levels. So if you have weakness and you just don't have any brain fog, and we don't just think it's an insomnia problem, we want to look at your hormones and say, hey, listen, we need to address that and try to help you fix that as well. So I want you to know we don't treat anything in these offices, and never say we treat anything. We help you recover and look at the biophysical and chemical markers to help them get back into functional ranges, but we never say treat in this office. Other factors besides organ dysfunction on the lab tests, detoxification, we do some mud packing. I'm going to get into that a little bit later if you come in. Electric magnetic fields we talked about. Dental work we already talked about. So a couple questions you probably have now is, does my insurance cover this? And the first thing I would say is it's a good possibility that it doesn't cover it. And the reason that is because you had normal tests. And when you have normal tests, then the insurance isn't in the business of spending money, they're in the business of getting money. And when you have a normal test, it can't justify, oh, well, we got to investigate. You have a normal test. And I think sometimes that's why the lab ranges are so wide. Kind of makes sense. So if this makes a lot of sense to you and you got a lot of value out of it, I'm really happy to help you with that. We're here to get people better that cannot get better and they have nowhere else to go. People come to us as their last hope, so I get a lot of difficult cases. When you're ready for this type of commitment, we're here for you. If you're a smoker, like I mentioned, you have to stop smoking before you come in here. I'm not going to accept your case. If you're not ready to potentially spend some money on some tests, then I can't help you. Sometimes the insurance does help. I can create a super bill. Adrenal testing a lot of the time is reimbursed, but it's a case-by-case scenario, and I don't know until I see you, not necessarily what your insurance is going to cover, but what I'm going to need to do as well. We'll fill out all the paper work for you. We'll do everything to work within your financial means, so I'll explain that to you when you come on in. And if you like this information but you're not willing to do anything about it, then you just wasted however long this video is, because now that you're armed with the information, you have to finally decide to do something about it. My consultation fee is $195, but that's a very, very extensive consultation. You have to fax your blood work with me over before you come and see me. You have to watch this video. So if you're coming and just calling, do I work with insomnia patients, and you haven't watched this video, then you're going to have to sign an affidavit saying that you watched this video before you come in and see me. If you haven't signed that affidavit, I'm not going to see you. It's $195. We give you, I want to say, 20, 30 pages of notes or of questionnaires to fill out what your diet history is like, what your dental history is like, what your health history is like, any prior tests that you've done. I know you have a stack at home that no one's looked at. That's what I look at. That takes time. And so if you don't have that filled out before you come in here, I'm not going to see you. And then also, we also have an extensive look at your functional ranges. So you bring in you fax in your blood work, you fax in the 30 pages or bring it in, and then I want to look at that before I see you so I know who's sitting in front of me. I got to put it on a functional range scale, and that takes me time too. So it's $195 for my consult. I hope I've given you a lot of information. I've empowered you to take responsibility for your health today. I hope this made a lot of sense to you today. I hope the value was great. And the next thing to do is just to really watch this video again. I went over a lot of information, or if you know someone who's suffering with insomnia, send it to them and make an appointment. Get all your blood work and a request for some information. I'll send you the affidavit to show that you sign it and that you've watched this, and I would love to be able to see you. So my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I'm with Boca Health Center, and I want you to know that your insomnia can be fixed. Thank you so much.